What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today I am very excited because we have a new character card to talk about in the Transformers TCG. It's Decepticon Venin, although it's an Insecticon, so why is it not called Insecticon Venin? I don't know. It was revealed by the lovely folks over on Vector Sigma, a very good Transformers TCG website that you should be checking rather regularly. I will pop a link to that article in the description of this video, so like with the other reveals, do me a favour, go check on that article, because you're not actually doing me a favour. It's a good article, there's some good deck lists, I'm pretty sure you're going to like it. So thank you to those lovely chaps for letting us see it. So what does Decepticon Venin do? Well, starting off, it's a bit of a beast. It's a 9 cost. 9 is very expensive for an Insecticon. To put it into context, the next most expensive is Bombshell. There is no 9 cost Insecticon before this one. Having said that, the stats are sufficiently beefy. It has got a health of 12. Now, the next highest health is 11, that's Barrage, so you've got the highest health of any Insecticon, and in bot mode you've got an attack of 6, which is higher than any of the others. Barrage and Bombshell in bot mode both have an attack of 5. Point is here, we've got beefy stats. Now the defense is not particularly great. 1 or 2 is either average or below average, and the attack in alt mode is 4, which is fine, not great to be honest with you. It's average even for an Insecticon, but the fact that you've got 12 health and 6 attack is very, very nice indeed. As are both of the skills on this. So in bot mode, if your opponent has no cards in hand, each of your Insecticons has Pierce free, which guarantees you do free damage as long as your attack is free. You cannot have Pierce higher than your attack, regardless of what your opponent's defense is. That's pretty gosh darned good. I mean, Pierce free is basically Fusion Cannon of Megatron, or Piercing Blaster. Those are cards which give you Pierce free. Pierce free is great. There's no character card that can give Pierce free at the moment. Now RC's Pierce is equal to her attack, so that can be up at Pierce free, but that's about the best you can do. The thing is, your opponent has to have 0 cards in hand for you to be able to do this. Now, maybe you're playing against a Dinobots deck, you take out Snarl, which is essentially their draw engine when they've got a 0 card hand, they play Dino Chomp to give themselves a 0 card hand, and then you get Pierce. But it's not always going to happen. Now, there will be times. And when your opponent has a 0 card hand, they're going to be in a really awkward situation. They draw a card for their turn. Do they play that card and risk giving you Pierce free? The answer most of the time is going to be no. Your opponent is going to be not playing cards that they rather would play to try and slow you down. Anytime your opponent is not doing what they want to do to try and hurt you, you're winning that round, ladies and gentlemen. Now, when you flick into alt mode, we've got another really nice skill here. When this or one of your other Insecticons is KO'd, your opponent chooses 2 cards from their hand and scraps them. And here's the weird thing, right? I went and looked through every Wave 1 character when I was preparing for this video. There are no characters in Wave 1 that make you discard or scrap cards from your hand. That is not a mechanic any Wave 1 characters have. This, ladies and gentlemen, is brand new. And Disruption is awesome. One of my favourite ideas for this is playing Security Checkpoint. Now, Security Checkpoint makes both players scrap all of their upgrades from their hand, so just make sure you played all the upgrades you want to. But then your opponent only has action cards in hand, so then when you have an Insecticon KO'd and your opponent has to scrap 2 cards from their hand, hopefully they only have 2, and you can win rather nicely. Now, clearly this sets bot mode up beautifully here, because your opponent's discarding cards from their hand. Bot mode gives all your Insecticons Pierce free when you've got an opponent with no cards in their hand. Clearly the synergy between both sides of this card is awesome, and I'm a big fan of cards where both sides work together. Now, this immediately made me think of Decepticon Shockwave. Decepticon Shockwave in bot mode says that when a card is scrapped from your opponent's hand, they have to take 1 damage counter onto one of their characters. The problem is, it's an 11 cost. You combine that with the 9 cost Decepticon Venin, and it's not going particularly well. You could still play one more Insecticon, you could play Kickback here, but Venin really is a character that loves playing with other Insecticons, so I don't think the Shockwave combination is the best one here. So clearly what we want to be doing, or at least one of the things we want to be doing for this character, is trying to disrupt your opponent's hand. Get them down to a low hand size so you can either really disrupt in ult mode, or you can get Pierce when you're in bot mode. And we've got some options here. Collateral damage is a card I quite like here. Each player chooses a weapon on one of their characters and scraps it, and a card in their hand and scraps it. Now that will disrupt you as much as your opponent, but it could work out rather nicely here. But actually the type of character that Venin is helps out beautifully. It is an Insecticon, which means you have access to Bug Bomb. Bug Bomb is a utility upgrade that can only be put on Insecticons, and when the upgraded character is KO'd, you draw a card, and you scrap an enemy upgrade, and your opponent scraps a card from their hand. So really nice generally as an upgrade, but especially nice when your opponent has to scrap a card from their hand and get you closer to having Pierce free. But I'm also a big fan of Rapid Ascent here, because regardless of which mode you're in, you are a ranged character. Now Rapid Ascent is an armor, which gives you +1 defense and has an orange pip. And if you put it on a ranged character, your opponent chooses a card from their hand and scraps it. And you can see here that if you're playing a few of these cards, like Rapid Ascent, like Bug Bomb, like Security Checkpoint, and then you combine that with Venin skills, your opponent's hand is going to get wrecked sooner rather than later, and that's pretty lovely. Now, being an Insecticon, you do also have access to Swarm. Swarm says when you play it, you flip a battle card for each Insecticon with which you began the game. For each orange you flip, your opponent takes 1 damage to a character. For each blue that you flip, you repair 1 damage from one of your characters. Although, as we're going to see in a minute, you cannot play a 4-wide deck with Venin, which does hurt Swarm. Being a ranged character, you also have access to Armed Hovercraft, +1 attack, blue pip, and when you put it on a ranged character, you do 1 damage to each enemy. So there are real advantages for being both an Insecticon and a ranged character. The problem with Venin is it does not fit into the traditional 4-wide Insecticon deck that we were playing back in Wave 1. You see, with Wave 1, we're playing Barrage, a 7 cost, Scrapnel, a 7 cost, Kickback, a 5 cost, and Ransack, a 6 cost. That gives us exactly 25 stars. And Venin is a 9 cost character. The best we can do is Chop Shop at a 6 cost, Ransack at a 6 cost, and Kickback at a 5 cost, but that gives you 17 stars. You cannot then put Venin into that deck. It will put you up to 26. So clearly here, what we need is a new Insecticon deck. And one of my favourite partners here is an Insecticon that we weren't playing in the other deck. It's Bombshell. I like Bombshell. Really weirdly, there was an interview in Tabletop Gaming in the UK when this game was released, where one of the card designers picked out some of their favourite cards and they mentioned Bombshell. And here's the thing about Bombshell. It's a vanilla character and it's an 8 cost. But the stats are great. 10 health isn't great. 2 defense is alright. 5 attack is quite nice when you're in bot mode. But when you're in ult mode, 4 defense is really high. So 10 health, 4 defense, you've got 3 attack, but then Venin comes in and gives you Pierce free. Now for this you really are relying on Pierce free, so you do want to go quite heavy on the hand disruption. But now you've essentially got a character with pretty good stats that is going to stay around a while, that has got Pierce free, and because you're really relying on trying to get your opponent down to a 0-card hand, you're going to be disrupting them here. So it's not like they're going to be able to do all that much anyway, because if you're successful, you're going to just be getting cards out of their hand, limiting their options, while sitting there with Pierce free and a very high defense. That would give you 17 stars in a deck, so you can then add whichever other Insecticon you like. But I also quite like Barrage here. Barrage has Pierce naturally. When you flip into ult mode, one of your characters gets Pierce 2 until end of turn. It could be Barrage, or you could use Barrage to give Venin an extra 2 Pierce, bearing in mind that Venin naturally has an attack of 6 and Pierce 2, so that would put him up to an attack of 6 with Pierce 5, which would work very, very nicely indeed. Barrage only starts off with an attack of 3, so if you've got Pierce 5, you need to add 2 to the attack somewhere along the line. And again, we've got a 7 cost here, so you're absolutely fine in terms of sticking in any other Insecticon. Incidentally, in bot mode, when you're attacking a damaged enemy, you've got Bold 2 and an attack of 5, which will give you a little bit of beef in terms of actually attacking here. What's really nice is that you can play a free-wide Insecticon deck, and you've got some real advantages, and you are not going to get a 25-star deck. Back in Wave 1, not having a 25-star deck sucked, because there was no way to build up the extra stars. But in Wave 2, yeah, we've got are star cards, like Bolt of Lightning, for instance, which does 3 damage to an enemy. I'm not saying this is the one you have to use, we haven't seen them all yet, I'm just giving it as an example, which is going to be lovely because you can take advantage of some of these really powerful action cards. Although we don't know what all of them are yet. We know we're getting 7, we've seen 2, it will depend on what the other 5 do. And then, of course, if you want to build up your Pierce, might I suggest Energon Axe? Now, Energon Axe is slightly annoying because you can only put it onto a damaged character, but it gives you Pierce 2 and +3 attack. Blue Pip, if you're going attacking, is kind of annoying, but +3 attack and Pierce is very, very nice indeed. And we've also got the Bigger They Are. Now, the Bigger They Are is very nice for Insecticon decks because it's an action card that gives one of your characters +2 attack. But if you're attacking an enemy that has more stars than it, you get Pierce 4. Well, most of your Insecticons are very small in terms of their star cost, so this is going to work rather nicely indeed. And then don't forget Piercing Blaster that I mentioned earlier. The last point I need to make here, this is a leader, but we have no Decepticon leader cards. I mentioned this when I talked about Megatron Arrogant Ruler the other day. I did the exclusive reveal of that, link in the description. We don't have a Decepticon leader card. We've got Matrix of Leadership for Autobots. You've got to think there's something coming in Wave 2. I await with bated breath when it does. I really like Decepticon Venin here. I think it's a really nice card. You cannot play it like you played the Insecticons in Wave 1. You gotta play it a little bit differently. But ladies and gentlemen, I think there is an awful lot to like here. But I would like to know what you think about this. So please do let me know in the comment section. Go nuts, but please do remember the rule. Be nice, would ya? Then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, and follow me on Twitter at the Wossy, where I talk about Transformers and other things. Thank you very much to the lovely folks at Vector Sigma for showing us this card. I am delighted. Please do make sure you check out their website. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wossy Plays.